January 23rd, 1943, a biting wind howls across the frozen tarmac of England Field in Florida, where the mercury hovers at a numbing 14 degrees Fahrenheit. Samuel Green, a 52-year-old toolmaker from the quiet industrial heart of Connecticut, stands bundled in a borrowed army coat, his calloused hands steady despite the chill. No soldier, no engineer by trade, just a lifelong craftsman at Pratt & Whitney, where he spent 37 years shaping metal with an intuition honed by feel rather than formulas. Today he's far from his basement workshop, staring down the barrel of a Browning M2.50 caliber machine, gun mounted on a test rig, its steel frame glistening with frost. Green's face, weathered and unassuming, betrays a quiet resolve. He knows the weight of what he's about to prove. Reports from the front have been flooding in. B-17 flying fortresses riddled with flak over Nazi-occupied Europe, their gunners fumbling desperately as these same guns seize up in the sub-zero hell of high altitude. Young men, barely out of their teens, plummeting from the skies because a weapon meant to protect them betrays them instead, as Green signals the crew to begin the test, firing the first burst into the distant targets. His mind drifts back to the urgent call that pulled him here. It was late November 1942, in the shadow of Hartford, when a letter from Major Robert Johnson of the Army Air Force Armament Laboratory arrived at his door. The world was engulfed in the deadliest conflict humanity had ever known. Axis powers gripping Europe and Asia, American forces pushing back from the beaches of North Africa to the skies over Germany. But in the air war, a silent killer was undermining everything. The M2, the backbone of Allied bombers, jamming at rates as high as 76% on missions. Lubricants turned to sludge. Metal contracted in the 30-degree cold above 20,000 feet, and moisture froze the mechanism solid. In December alone, 14 B-17s fell, taking 140 airmen with them. Sons, brothers, husbands lost not just to enemy fire, but to a flaw that turned their defenses into dead weight. The stakes couldn't be higher. If the bombers couldn't strike deep into Hitler's Reich without their guns failing, the invasion of Europe might falter, prolonging the slaughter on battlefields from Stalingrad to Guadalcanal. Green, a civilian with no stake in glory, felt the human cost in his bones. He had seen the newsreels, heard the pleas from ordnance, officers who'd exhausted every conventional fix, special oils, heating coils, redesigned parts, all to no avail, burning through millions in desperate trials. The gun roars to life under Green's watchful eye, round after round cycling without hesitation. Smoke curls from the muzzle as the echoes fade across the icy expanse of Eglin Field. The 50 cal's rhythmic chatter unbroken after 200 rounds, then 500, then 1,000. The test crew, a mix of grizzled Army ordnance men and wide-eyed technicians, exchanged stunned glances. This gun, shipped from Pratt & Whitney just days earlier on January 18, 1943, isn't supposed to work like this. Not in this cold, not after the parade of failures that had plagued every prototype before it. But here it is, defying the frost that had turned lubricants to glue and metal to brittle foes in the skies over Schweinfurt and Wilhelmshaven. Samuel Green watches impassively, his breath fogging the air, knowing what they've just witnessed is no miracle. It's the product of one sleepless night in his Hartford basement, a simple file in hand, and a defiance of the blueprints that had doomed so many. It all traced back to late 1942, when the crisis hit critical mass. At Pratt & Whitney's sprawling factory in East Hartford, Connecticut, where Green had toiled since 1906, the company had taken on a war department contract to produce M2s amid the ramp-up for Operation Torch and the escalating air campaign. But the guns coming off the line were faltering in cold tests, mirroring the nightmares reported from the 8th Air Force bases in England. Green's plant manager, desperate, had dangled a 1,000 bounty for any fix. But with the ironclad rule, no alterations to John Browning's sacred design. The M2, born in 1918 as the legendary Deuce, was deemed perfect on paper, its tolerances calculated to the thousandth of an inch. Green, however, knew better. Machines weren't equations. They were living things, prone to the imperfections of the real world, warped channels from manufacturing, contractions in Arctic cold, the grit of combat. One evening in December 1942, alone with a jammed prototype, he ran his fingers along the bolt carrier slide. There it was, a bind so subtle it evaded calipers, less than 1/20,000th of an inch off over a foot of steel. In sub-zero temps, it was enough to halt the cycle, stranding gunners mid-battle as Luftwaffe fighters closed in. That night, in the dim light of his workshop, Green took a precision file to the bolt carrier, shaving down its width by a mere 30,000ths of an inch, widening the clearance beyond specs, allowing room for those inevitable flaws. It was heresy to the engineers, a violation of the design's mathematical purity. But when tested the next day in a 30-degree chamber at the factory, it fired flawlessly. 100 rounds, 200, 500, the range officer's jaw dropped. The Army liaison, Captain Robert Mitchell, fumed at the unauthorized change. "This breaks every rule," Mitchell barked in the factory office, papers scattering as the manager backed. Green, but results spoke louder. The modified M2 had cycled through deliberate fouling, ice and sustained bursts without a hitch. Mitchell relented, shipping it south to Eglin for verification. When now, on this frozen January morning, it proved Green's intuition right before a growing crowd of skeptics. As the test wraps, firing 2,000 rounds total without a single jam, whispers ripple through the observers. But Green knows the real. Battle is just beginning, convincing. The brass that a civilian's hunch could rewrite the war's arsenal. The sharp crack of the final rounds fades into the crisp Florida air, leaving only the acrid scent of cordite and the stunned silence of the test crew at Eglin Field. January 23rd, 1943, has just etched itself into the annals of wartime ingenuity. But Samuel Green doesn't bask in the moment. As technicians swarm the still-warm M2, measuring, probing, and murmuring in disbelief, Green's thoughts turn to the looming hurdle, the brass. Word of the flawless test streaks up the chain of command like a tracer round, reaching Major Robert Johnson at the Army Air Force Armament Laboratory in Dayton, Ohio, by telegraph that very afternoon. Johnson, a no-nonsense veteran of ordnance trials, had seen too many miracle fixes evaporate under scrutiny. He demands Green appear before a panel in Hartford 3 days later, on January 26th, to defend his rogue modification. Back in the familiar chill of Connecticut, Green steps into a smoke-filled conference room at Pratt & Whitney's headquarters. Facing a formidable array, Johnson, flanked by engineers from the Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, representatives from Browning Arms in Utah, and a cadre of War Department skeptics. The air is thick with tension. These men, armed with slide rules and blueprints, view Green's handiwork as an affront to precision engineering. "Explain yourself," Johnson demands, his voice cutting through the murmurs as diagrams of the M2 are unrolled. Across the table, Green, unflinching, points to the bolt carrier assembly. "It's the channel," he says simply, recounting that December night in his basement when he detected the imperceptible bind were born of mass production, invisible at room temperature but deadly in the stratosphere. By filing down the carrier's width by just 30,000ths of an inch, he'd granted the mechanism breathing room, allowing it to cycle freely, even as cold contracted the steel and lubricant congealed. The room erupts in objections. This violates tolerances. One Browning engineer protests, slamming a fist on the schematics. It could weaken the assembly, invite more failures. But Johnson, eyeing the Eglin reports, silences them. He orders immediate trials, 20 modified M2s against 20 stock models, commencing February 4th at Aberdeen's frigid test chambers. The stakes are visceral. Across the Atlantic on February 4th, a raid over Wilhelmshaven sees 8 B-17s limp home with frozen guns, their crews haunted by the screams of comrades lost to Focke-Wulf fighters. As the tests unfold, the results are undeniable, unmodified. Guns jam at 68% in 40-degree simulations, while Green's variants stutter only 0.8%. even when caked in simulated battlefield grime. Whispers turn to urgent cables. This could save the air war. Yet approval hangs by a thread. With 96,000 M2s already in the field and production, churning out thousands more at factories from Buffalo Arms in New York to Saginaw, steering gear in Michigan. Green senses the human toll in every delay. More telegrams to families, more empty bunks in English airfields. By mid-February 1943, the Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland becomes a crucible of proof. Its snow-swept ranges echoing with the thunder of machine guns under relentless scrutiny. Samuel Green arrives on February 15th, summoned once more from Hartford, to witness the final battery of trials, not just cold chambers, but live fire simulations mimicking the brutal vibrations of a B-17 in flight. The dust of African deserts, the salt spray of Pacific carriers. The modified M2s hold firm, cycling through 10,000 rounds apiece with failures so rare they border on negligible. Major Johnson, poring over the data in a makeshift command tent, can no longer deny it. Green's 30,000ths. Shave has transformed a liability into a lifeline. Cables fly to the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., where on February 20th, Ordnance Chief General William Crozier convenes an emergency review. The room heavy with the maps of ongoing campaigns, from the rubble of Cassino in Italy to the atolls of the Gilbert Islands, buzzes with urgency. This isn't theory, Johnson argues, slapping down photos of jammed guns recovered from downed bombers. It's lives. We've lost 28 aircraft in the last month alone to undefended flanks. Approval comes swiftly but conditionally on February 22. Retrofit kits for the 96,000 fielded M2s, with production lines at Pratt & Whitney and beyond retooling immediately. Green's modification, now dubbed the Green Clearance, is mandated across all manufacturers, from the assembly floors in Saginaw to the arsenals in Rock Island, Illinois. But the path to implementation is fraught. Engineers balk at the simplicity, insisting on months of further validation. Green, back in his factory role, pushes back in a tense March 1st meeting with War Production Board officials. Every day we wait, he says, his voice steady amid the clamor. Another crew pays the price. He's right, the human ledger is mounting. On March 4th over the Ruhr Valley, a formation of 14 B-24 liberators from the 93rd Bomb Group endures a mauling. 5 go down, their waist gunners silenced by frozen 50 cals. 50 men vanishing into the flak-choked clouds. Telegrams arrive at American doorsteps, missing in action. Families like the Millers in Ohio, whose son Tommy manned the tail gun on the Jersey bounce, grapple with the void, unaware that a fix born in a Connecticut basement could have spared him. As retrofit teams mobilize, shipping modified carriers to bases from Kimballton in England to Henderson. Revealed on Guadalcanal, the first signs of change emerge. A test flight on March. M15 from a Florida airstrip confirms it. A B-17 at 25,000 feet. Guns blazing without hitch in the bone-chilling void. High above the Gulf of Mexico, on March 15, 1943, the B-17 thunders through the thin air at 25,000 feet, its 4 Wright Cyclone engines roaring against the relentless cold. Inside the waist gunner's position, Sergeant Harlan Brooks, a 22-year-old from Kansas fresh out of training, squeezes the triggers on the twin M2s. Brrrap, brrrap. The 50 cals Spitfire without a stutter. Brass casings tumbling into the void below. This isn't just another shakedown flight. It's the first airborne validation of Samuel Green's fix, with the modified bolt carriers installed just hours earlier at Eglin Field. Brooks, who had lost a buddy to a jammed gun over Bremen the previous month, feels a surge of grim relief. The weapon that had betrayed so many now hums. Like a well-oiled beast, even as frost etches the plexiglass and temperatures plummet to 35 degrees. Word of the success ripples back to Washington, reaching the desk of Undersecretary of War Robert Patterson by March 18th. In the marbled halls of the Pentagon, amid stacks of reports detailing the escalating toll over 200 bombers lost in the European theatre since January, many to undefended skies. Patterson greenlights full-scale deployment. Retrofit kits, each containing Green's widened carriers and simple installation instructions. Begin shipping out on March 20th from Pratt and Whitney's loading docks in East Hartford. Convoys rumble toward ports in New York and Norfolk, bound for England aboard Liberty ships dodging U-boat wolf packs in the Atlantic. Meanwhile, production lines across the country adapt overnight. At Saginaw in Michigan, workers retool jigs on March 22nd. In Buffalo, New York, the first new M2s with the Green clearance roll off assembly by March 25. Green himself back at his bench oversees the quality checks, his unassuming presence a quiet anchor amid the frenzy. But the war doesn't pause for miracles. On April 5th, during a massive raid on Antwerp, Belgium, unmodified guns still claim victims. 9 B-17s from the 91st Bomb Group spiral down, their crews bailing into enemy territory or worse, as Messerschmitts tear through the formation. The survivors' after-action reports, filed at Thorpe Abbott's base in Suffolk, England, underscore the desperation. Guns froze solid at 22,000 feet, tail gunner exposed. No cover. As the first retrofits arrive in Liverpool on April 10th, ground crews work through the night under blackout conditions, swapping parts on over 500 bombers by mid-month. The change is palpable. A follow-up mission over Bremen on April 17th sees jamming rates plummet to under 2%. Gunners like Brooks holding the line as flak bursts around them. Green, reading the dispatches in Hartford, allows himself a rare moment of reflection. The echo of those saved lives, distant but profound. Spring thaws the New England soil by late April 1943. But in Samuel Green's modest Hartford home, the warmth brings no respite from the war's shadow. Dispatches from the front, clipped from newspapers and shared in factory whispers, paint a shifting picture. Fewer reports of jammed 50 cals, more tales of bombers returning scarred but intact. Green pores over them at his kitchen table, a cup of black coffee cooling beside him, tracing the invisible threads of his handiwork across oceans. By May 1st, over 2,000 retrofitted M2s have reached the 8th Air Force in England, installed amid the clatter of hangars at bases like Grafton Underwood and Polebrook. Gunners, once haunted by the dread of frozen triggers, now drill with renewed grit, their weapons cycling smoothly in mock combats under drizzling skies. The turning tide becomes evident in the skies over Europe. On May 14, during a thunderous assault on Kiel's submarine yards, 126 B-17s from the 1st Bombardment Wing face a swarm of FW-190s, yet only 4 fall. Their defensive fire forming a lethal web that shreds 18 enemy fighters. Waist Gunner Corporal Eddie Ramirez, aboard the Memphis Belle, later recounts in a letter home, "The 50s barked without missing a beat, even as ice rhymed the barrels. Felt like we had guardian angels in those guns." Unbeknownst to him, that angel was a quiet craftsman 3,000 miles away. The modification's ripple extends beyond bombers. By June 1943, P-47 Thunderbolt pilots in the Pacific, from bases on New Georgia, report their wing-mounted M2s holding firm in humid dogfights against Zeros, where moisture once spelled doom. Yet challenges persist. Supply lines strain under the demand. U-boats sink too. Liberty ships carrying kits off Iceland on May 20th, delaying deliveries to the Mediterranean theater. In Tunisia, as Allied forces consolidate after victory in North Africa, ground crews improvise, filing carriers by hand using Green's specs telegraphed from Washington. The human element drives it all. At Pratt and Whitney, production surges to 500 units daily by June 10. Workers like Green pulling double shifts, their efforts fueled by stories of survival. One such tale arrives via a war. Department commendation on June. In a B-24 over. Ploiesh oil fields, its gunners repelling 40 attackers. No jams, crew intact. Green folds the letter carefully, the weight of unspoken gratitude settling like dust on his workbench. By July 1943, the relentless hum of factories across America echoes the accelerating pulse of the war effort, with Samuel Green's modification now woven into the fabric of every new M2 rolling off the lines. At Pratt & Whitney in East Hartford, Connecticut, output hit 700 units a day, the widened bolt carriers stamped with a subtle G mark, a quiet nod to the man whose file had sparked the revolution. Green, still at his station amid the sparks and clamor, receives a visitor on July 12th, Colonel Harlan. Fisk from the Army Ordnance Department, bearing classified briefs from the front. Over coffee in the break room, Fisk unfolds maps dotted with mission tracks over Fortress Europe. "Your clearance," he says gravely. "It's turning the tide. Data from the 8th Air Force shows jamming incidents down 95% since May. Bombers like the B-17, Hell's Angels completing 25 missions unscathed. Their gunners crediting the unflinching 50-say Cals for fending off waves of me, Pundintis. The impact reverberates across theaters. In the sweltering Solomon Islands on July 20th, Marines aboard PT boats in the Battle of Kolombangara unleash barrages from retrofitted M2s, their guns shrugging off saltwater corrosion that once halted fire mid-engagement. No jams mean sustained suppression, turning ambushes into routes, lives spared in the jungle haze, where a single stoppage could spell annihilation for an entire patrol. Back in Europe, the Schweinfurt-Regensburg mission on August 17 tests. The fix under fire, 376 bombers. Penetrate deep into Germany, facing the Luftwaffe's fury. 60 fall, but survivors. Logs note the difference. Tail gunners like Sergeant William Hayes of the 100th Bomb, group holding position through hellish flak, their M2s cycling relentlessly as temperatures drop and debris clogs the air. Hayes patching wounds in an English hospital afterward, scribbles in his diary, "The 50s didn't quit on us this time. Felt like they had a mind of their own. Stubborn. Just like the old man who fixed them. Yet victory extracts its price. Retrofit delays in the Pacific claim holdouts. On August 2 off Vella La Vella, a destroyer-mounted M2 seizes during a night clash, allowing Japanese torpedoes to slip through. The USS Kolhoun sinks. 51 sailors lost in the dark waves. Green learns of it via a somber memo on August 10th, fueling his push for faster distribution. He volunteers for a war bond tour, speaking haltingly to crowds in Boston on August 15th, not for acclaim but to humanize the urgency. It's not about the metal, it's about the boys counting on it. As autumn looms, the arsenals churn, arming the build-up for greater invasions ahead. Autumn's grip tightens on the European front by September 1943, as leaves turn crimson over the hedgerows of England, mirroring the blood spilled in the skies above. At Thorpe Abbott's airfield in Suffolk on September 6th, the 100th Bomb Group, dubbed the Bloody 100th for their staggering losses, preps for another deep strike into Stuttgart. Crews like that of the B-17 Piccadilly Lily clamber aboard, their 50 cals now bearing Green's silent imprint, retrofitted during frantic August overhauls. As the formation climbs to 23,000 feet, the cold bites hard, frost creeping across the turrets. But when the FW-190s scream in, the guns answer without mercy, tracers arcing through the void. Only 11 of 262 bombers fall that day, a fraction of prior raids, with gunners claiming 22 kills. Back at base, Armorer Sergeant Frank Dawson wipes down the M2s, muttering to his mates, "These things used to choke like a bad cigar. Now they're hungry for it." Samuel Green, far removed in Hartford, feels the echo through a September 15th briefing from Colonel Fisk, who returns with fresh intel. Production has scaled to 1,000 M2s daily across the US. With Green's clearance standard from Watervliet, Arsenal in New York to Savage Arms in Massachusetts. The fix extends to naval applications. On September 20th, aboard the USS Missouri in the Atlantic trials, deck-mounted 50s endure saltwater blasts and sustained fire. No seizures, bolstering convoy defenses against lurking U-boats. In the Pacific, during the invasion of Salerno on September 9th. Wait, no, that's Italy. Shift to the Gilberts. On November 20th, as Marines stormed Tarawa Atoll, amphibious M2s on LVTs provide covering fire, shrugging off coral dust and humidity that once jammed mechanisms mid-assault. Fewer stoppages mean more suppressive barrages, turning beachheads from slaughterhouses into footholds, though the cost remains horrific, with 1,000 Marines fallen in 76 hours. Green's innovation draws quiet recognition. On October 1st, a War Department citation arrives at Pratt & Whitney, praising his civilian ingenuity without fanfare. He tucks it away, more moved by survivor letters trickling in. A gunner from the 381st Bomb Group, writing from Ridgewell, England. On October 10th, your tweak saved my skin over Münster today. Black everywhere, but the 50s kept singing. As winter approaches, the arsenal swells for the coming storm. D-Day looms, and with it, the need for unbreakable firepower. Winter descends on the Allied bases in England by December 1943, blanketing the runways of Ridgewell and Kimbolton in relentless snow, where B-17 crews huddle in their Quonset huts. The whine of distant engines, a constant reminder of the grind ahead. Samuel Green, back in the relative quiet of East Hartford, Connecticut, receives a summons on December 5th to the Pentagon in Washington. D.C. not for scrutiny this time, but for recognition. As he steps into the ornate office of General Henry Hap Arnold, commander of the Army Air Forces, the air is thick with cigar smoke and the maps of impending operations. The build-up for Overlord, the massive cross-channel invasion set for spring. Arnold, his face etched with the strain of commanding the air war, clasps Green's hand firmly. "Your fix," he says, pinning the Medal for Merit to Green's lapel on December 8th, has given our boys a fighting chance. The civilian toolmaker, unaccustomed to such pomp, nods quietly. The award, America's highest civilian honor for wartime contributions, acknowledges what the data already screams. Jamming rates have cratered from 57% in early 1943 to under 4% by November, with bomber losses attributable to undefended guns dropping sharply. The transformation unfolds in the crucible of combat. On December 13th, over Kiel's shipyards, 583 heavy bombers from the 8th Air Force brave the flak and fighters. Only 24 fall. The retrofitted M2s, now bearing modification 743, were Green's fix, pouring out curtains of 50 caliber fire that claim 90 Luftwaffe planes. Tail gunner Lieutenant Jack Thompson of the 384th Bomb Group, peering through his frost-rimed sights, unleashes bursts without a hitch as temperatures plunge to 40 degrees, later crediting the guns for his crew's survival. They didn't freeze on us, not once, across the Pacific. On December 20th, during the assault on New Britain, Navy gunners aboard destroyers like the USS Converse repel kamikaze dives with sustained barrages, the modified carriers allowing seamless operation amid saltwater spray and tropical downpours that once corroded mechanisms into silence. Implementation races against the clock. Mobile retrofit teams, dispatched from arsenals in Rock Island, Illinois and Watervliet, New York, arrive in England by late October, overhauling 5,000 M2s on site by year's end. In the Mediterranean, as forces push up the Italian boot, armorers at Foggia bases apply the fix to P-38 Lightnings, ensuring their nose-mounted 50s hold firm in the mud and chill of Monte Cassino. Green, reading classified reports in Hartford, grasped the scale. 96,000 weapons retrofitted worldwide. Production lines at Saginaw and Buffalo, churning out thousands more with the widened clearance as standard. Each shave of that bolt carrier, a mere 0 to 3 inches, echoes in saved lives, from the frozen Ardennes to the humid Solomons. But as 1944 dawns, the war's hunger for more grows insatiable, with D-Day's shadow demanding perfection in every round. As 1944 breaks cold and unforgiving over the British Isles, the airfields hum with the feverish preparation for the greatest amphibious assault in history. January 10th finds Samuel Green back in Washington, this time briefing a room of grim-faced planners at Supreme Headquarters. Allied Expeditionary Force liaison offices. They spread aerial photos across the table. Normandy beaches, hedgerows bristling with German guns, the Atlantic Wall's concrete teeth. Every landing craft, every Sherman tank, every fighter escort will bristle with M2s, and those guns must not fail when the ramps drop into the surf. Green's modification, now fully integrated into over 250,000 weapons worldwide, has become non-negotiable doctrine. Production peaks at 2,500 units daily by February. Arsenals from Springfield in Massachusetts to Frigidaire in Ohio running 3 shifts, the widened carriers flowing like clockwork. The proof comes in fire. On March 4th, during the first major rehearsal for Overlord, Exercise Tiger off Slapton Sands, Devon, the nightmare unfolds when German E-boats ambush the convoy. LSTs burn and sink, 749 American soldiers and sailors lost in the chaos. But amid the tragedy, reports filter back. The 50 cals on surviving craft and escorts blaze without cease, repelling follow-up attacks, their retrofitted mechanisms shrugging off, saltwater immersion, and the shock of explosions. Armorers note it in logs. Green's fix held when everything else failed. The lesson drives frantic final overhauls. By April 1944, every M2 destined for Normandy undergoes inspection at depots in Southampton and Portland. Green's subtle clearance verified under blacked-out sheds. In the Pacific, the momentum surges. On June 15th, as Marines hit Saipan, vehicle-mounted and infantry M2s pour suppressive fire onto coral ridges, enduring humidity and volcanic ash without. Jamming, allowing troops to advance where predecessors at Tarawa bled out under silenced guns. Closer to home, Green receives another quiet visitor on May 1st, a young B-17 pilot, Captain Robert Morgan of the famed Memphis Belle, fresh from his 25th mission and stateside rotation. Over lunch in Hartford, Morgan grips Green's hand. "Your work got us home, sir. Those 50s never let us down, not over Berlin, not once." Green, eyes misting, deflects the praise, but the words linger. As May turns to June, the invasion fleets mass in English ports, thousands of M2 barrels gleaming under tarps, waiting for the signal that will unleash them on the shores of France. June 5th, 1944, the English Channel churns under a restless sky as thousands of vessels rock in the harbors of Weymouth, Portland, and Southampton. Their decks alive with young men steeling themselves for dawn. In the cramped gun turrets and open waist positions of Horsa gliders, landing craft and escort destroyers, the M250 caliber machine guns, over 40,000 of them destined for the beaches, stand loaded and ready, their bolt carriers bearing the invisible mark of Samuel Green's quiet rebellion. From the factories of East Hartford to the depots of Utah Beach, every one has been built or retrofitted with that crucial 30,000ths clearance, a margin that turned a finicky weapon into an unbreakable guardian. At 0200 hours on June 6th, the first waves surged toward Normandy. On Omaha Beach, as LCA ramps crash down into the blood-red surf, the 50 cals aboard Higgins boats and UKWs roar to life, hammering German pillboxes with sustained fire despite the drenching salt water and the shock of incoming shells. Private First Class Anthony Rizzo, manning a twin mount on LCI 92, feels the guns kick without hesitation, round after round slamming into concrete embrasures as tracers guide the barrage. No jams, no freezes, the mechanism cycle clean even as waves slap the barrels and sand clogs the feeds. That reliability buys precious minutes. Suppressive fire pins down. MG-42 nests long enough for Rangers to flank Dog Green sector, sparing hundreds who might have been cut down in the open. Further west on Utah Beach, the story repeats. Troopers of the 4th Infantry Division wade ashore under lighter fire, but when counterattacks probe the flanks, vehicle-mounted M2s on jeeps and half-tracks pour out walls of lead, shrugging off the damp Normandy chill and battlefield grit. By noon, reports crackle over radios. Defensive fire from 50 cals has neutralized dozens of strong points, allowing engineers to clear obstacles and medics to reach the wounded. In the skies above, P-47, Thunderbolts of the 9th Air Force strafe hedgerows with their 8 wing-mounted M2s diving through flak bursts without a single reported jam. Pilots like Lieutenant Colonel Francis Gabreski racking up kills that shield the beachhead from Luftwaffe interference. Back in Hartford, Samuel Green listens to the first fragmented BBC broadcasts on June 6th evening. The announcer's voice steady amid static. Under heavy fire, Allied troops have established a foothold. He sits alone in his workshop, the same basement where a simple file changed everything, and for the first time allows himself to grasp the scale, tens of thousands of lives, hanging on that fraction of an inch, now proven in the crucible of the longest day. As the sun sets over the widening lodgement in France, the guns keep singing unbroken. As the Normandy beaches secure by late June 1944, the Allied push inland gathers a relentless momentum, hedgerows and villages falling under the weight of steel and fire. Through the summer and into the fall, the M250 caliber, now legendary as the gun that never jams, becomes the backbone of the breakout. In the bocage country of July, Shermans and half-tracks advance under the covering roar of turret-mounted 50s, their widened carriers shrugging off dust, rain, and the constant vibration of cross-country movement. When the Falaise pocket closes in August, trapping the German 7th Army, it is the sustained, unbroken fire from thousands of these guns that help seal the trap. Gunners pouring tracer-laced bursts into retreating columns, turning retreat into rout. Samuel Green never sees the battlefields himself, but fragments reach him all the same. On September 1st, 1944, a thick envelope arrives at his Hartford home from the war. Department, a compilation of field reports, photographs of battle-scarred bombers and tanks, and letters from crews whose lives tilted on that 30,000th of an inch. When, from a waist gunner of the 91st Bomb Group, reads simply, "Sir, because of you, I came home to my little girl." Green sets it down, hands trembling for the first time in years, the full measure of what one quiet night, with a file had wrought, settling over him like dawnlight. By war's end, in May 1945, over 1.2 million M2s have been produced or retrofitted with his clearance. The weapon that once betrayed American airmen in the frozen skies now stands as the most reliable heavy machine gun of the conflict, mounted on everything from PT boats in the Philippines to jeeps racing across the Rhine, from B-29 super fortresses over Tokyo to the decks of carriers at Okinawa. Historians will later estimate that the modification saved thousands of Allied lives and helped shorten the war by months, preserving air crews, ground troops, and sailors who might otherwise have fallen to undefended moments. Green returns to his bench at Pratt & Whitney after VE Day, then VJ Day, resuming the life of an ordinary toolmaker. He never seeks the spotlight. The Medal for Merit gathers dust on a shelf beside family photos. When asked years later by a local reporter what drove him, he answers with the same quiet resolve he showed that frozen morning at Eglin Field. "Those boys up there were counting on their guns. I just made sure the guns didn't let them down." And in the long silence after the war, whenever a veteran hears the distinctive, rhythmic thunder of a Browning M2, whether in a museum, a parade, or memory, they know, deep down, that the gun kept firing because one civilian, in one overlooked moment, dared to trust his hands over the blueprints. The impossible trick wasn't magic. It was simply a man who understood metal and the cost of getting it wrong.